All right, you want to talk a little bit about what this channel is about, how it came about, how it came to fruition?
Oh man, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Well, I can't remember what night it was, but we went to a rave. We seen what's the name? What are the names?
Juggernaut,
Yeah, Juggernaut and
Mode Step.
and you came over a little bit early, and I was gonna take some shrooms, and I don't know how much I took, but you thought it was a good idea to take more, so I took more shrooms. I don't know, it was probably maybe 6 or 7 grams, probably something like that.
It's a decent amount.
Yeah, decent amount. Took some shrooms, went to go see Juggernaut. I think we got back in the car, in Ranesh's car, I don't know, probably 11 o'clock or so, and then we were driving past Stockton Boulevard, and then we went down 14th Avenue, which is where I grew up, and then we passed by my mom's house, or where she died. So my mom died on 45th Street, right off of 14th Avenue. And I was on shrooms, so when I'm on shrooms, I tend to connect a little bit more with my thoughts, with my feelings, which for me, connecting with my feelings is pretty hard. I think for most men, it's pretty hard. And then for most men that's been to prison, it's even harder to connect with their feelings. And since doing shrooms, I feel like it's opened me up a little bit more to being more receptive. So while we're driving to my house to get dropped off, I just asked Ranesh to stop the car, and that was the first time I told you and Ranesh and Ranesh's friend that that's where my mom died. And I just had a moment, and it was okay, and I felt safe, and then we got dropped off at the house, and then me and you had a 2-hour conversation about all kinds of stuff, my criminal record, the things I've done, and it just flowed, and then I came up with the idea of creating content around it, around who I am as a person, because a lot of people that are in my life now currently don't know anything about my past, and not to the extent that I expressed to you. So since then, I think it's been a little bit over a month, we've just been filming, interviewing my clients, and asking me questions about my past, and I've opened up. We've done on-site places like Juvenile Hall, California Authority, Preston, and we've also done the jail, among other places, which we'll put out later. So the purpose of the channel is probably, first and foremost, to let people know that your past shouldn't be your current state, and your past shouldn't dictate who you are and who you can actually become. And I know that a lot of my clients view me as somebody that's impactful to some extent. I've influenced them to some extent through fitness, but to me it goes past that. I genuinely want to help and influence them in a different direction. It's going to create a more productive life and a more flourishing life to whatever capacity that may be. So most recently, a lot of my clients have expressed themselves in terms of what I've done for them and how I've influenced their life and how I've helped them, and I think it's important to put that out there with people I may not know. And I know there's a lot of people out there that currently do things like this, but maybe not to the extent that I want to do it in terms of how raw I want to be. So I have a past, and my past was very, very violent. My past was very, very influential to me in how I grew up and who I am as a person. So born in Romania, just a little bit about my background. Born in Romania, came to the States in 1983, lived in Mobile, Alabama, then Houston, Texas, and then came to Sacramento, California, and grew up in Oak Park on 6th Avenue and 33rd in 1986. So I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and from the time I was 10, I was in the gang. The first time I was incarcerated, I was 12. And then from 12 up until the time I went to the California Youth Authority, which we did a filming there, I spent most of my teenage years incarcerated in Juvenile Hall, Boys Ranch, Wharton E. Thornton Youth Center, Rites of Passage in Nevada. And it shaped who I was as a juvenile. So violence in gangs was very, very appropriate for me. It was very, very, it was a blessing at the time, because the situation that I had at the house was very, very volatile and violent. So my dad beat me, abused me mentally, physically, verbally, never sexually, and I hated him. Matter of fact, he was the first person that I wanted to kill, was my dad at 12. So that should give you a premise to what type of childhood I had and the things that I involved myself in as a teenager through gangs, and then eventually went to the California Youth Authority. I got out. I spent about almost 2 years in there, and then I got out and eventually went to prison for 12 years. I went to prison for attempted murder, and it definitely created a different person in prison. So the first half, or maybe a little bit more, the first half of prison, I was very angry, upset, bitter. I found out that I had a son. Didn't know that I had a son. I got a letter from Tracy and with ultrasound, and this is your son. So I had a son at 19. Wasn't in his life for 12 years, but I wrote him letters at least once a week, if not more, when I could, because I wasn't always able to write, which is where the name comes from, letters to my son. So having that anchor out here allowed me to focus and to channel what I really wanted to do while I was still in there in the trenches of prison, and I still had to conduct myself in a way that I was still involved in gangs and violence and a number of other things that I've talked about in some of the videos that we've recorded, which will come out. Ultimately, I think that it's important to keep in mind that even today we are always associated by who we are and the people that we surround ourselves with. So guilty by association. I used to believe that. I used to believe that the people around you will ultimately create who you are. But if that was the case, how was I able to create who I am in an environment where nobody around me was quite like me? I didn't have a teacher, I didn't have a mentor, I didn't have somebody guiding me on, hey, this is how you should probably do things to stay out of prison after 12 years. So I had to learn, and I had to do these things on my own, and I had to think a little bit differently. So I studied people, I interviewed people that were in and out of prison, and I just did everything that they did. I did the opposite. So I asked them why they kept coming back to prison, and there was a couple of things that stood out to me. Stability stood out to me. Lack of vocation stood out to me, and addiction stood out to me, and association stood out to me. And what I mean by that is they didn't have anything to go back to. So they were unstable. They didn't have a home. So if you don't have a home out of prison, you don't have anything. So you're going to revert back to the things that you're used to, like I used to do. Their association, their friends, whether that be gang members, their family, if they're still in the trenches of committing crime, it's probably going to be hard for you to get yourself out of that. Or you're going to get wrapped up in the things that they're wrapped up in if you live with them. So you're probably going to come back to prison. A poor choice in partner. So that was the big one. They were associating with females that just didn't have their best interests at heart, and they got really, really angry when they found out that their girlfriends did things with men. So they were very possessive, and then they did an act of violence that was geared towards rage and emotion. So I was like, well, better stay away from that. And then, of course, addiction. So drug addiction, alcohol addiction, distractions. They were all going out to the streets with all these distractions and addictions, and I had to learn how to disassociate myself from drugs, from drinking, from television, which is a distraction. So anything that distracted me, I didn't do. So I read a lot, I wrote a lot, I studied, I read hundreds and hundreds of books, and I created this person that most of the people in my life know today. But prior to that, I was a totally different person. And I think it's important to remember that the person that you were 5 years ago or 10 years ago doesn't have to be the same person today. But you do have to make some changes. You got to make some conscious decisions that you want to change, and you got to know what direction you're heading in. And I knew all these things. I had a detailed account on what I was going to do, all my steps, and I did it. And I didn't deviate from it. I didn't drink, I didn't do drugs until I got off parole. I didn't I didn't ask for somebody to give me a job. I created work. I created a cleaning service business called Bad Boy Cleaning, and I made money cleaning houses, adult entertainment. So read between the lines. And my parole agent had never heard of anybody getting out of prison and creating business. They were always looking for, I call them handouts. I didn't want a handout. I didn't want somebody to feel sorry for me and to pity me and to say, this poor thing, he spent 12 years in prison, must have went through hell. Let's help him out. The people that helped me were, my sister helped me. Initially, the person that raised my son helped me. Then I moved out, but they didn't help me in terms of like giving me money. They helped me in terms of stability, a place to stay, which is extremely important. And I paid them back by just showing gratitude and appreciation by picking myself up and never looking back. And that's pretty much what I've done since I've been out, since 2011. March 17th, 2011 is my anniversary. So every 3 days after my birthday. And I never looked back. So that's a little bit about who I am and why I'm doing this. Ultimately to impact more lives. Impact more lives than I've currently impacted.